All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Nonprofit Enthusiasts Live. I am so excited to have Dr. Angela White Jones here with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
We are glad to have you back on once again. If you are here tuning in, go ahead and invite a friend to the group, tag them in this chat. We're going to continue the conversation on measurement and evaluation. So you don't want to miss out on today's conversation. But before I dive in and we start talking, I just want to take a moment to do a special thanks to this month's Nonprofit Enthusiast Live sponsor, Catalyst Event Coaching, that focuses on empowering nonprofits and small businesses through training to execute successful events. And Shamika with Catalyst will be on with us next week, so make sure that you tune into that. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in it. So I'm so glad to have you back on Nonprofit Enthusiast Live, especially with this month's topic of measurement and evaluation, a scary topic for nonprofits. So glad to have you.
Yes, thank you. I'm
Okay.
glad to be here, be back.
Yes. So before we dive in, and I know you came on before, do you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and how you entered the nonprofit arena?
Sure. So I am currently a faculty member with the University of Central Florida, and I also am the director of our Master's in Research Administration program. And so that particular area also handles a significant amount of grants and proposals and does a wide-ranging amount of evaluations post-award as well. Before I joined the faculty at UCF. I worked in nonprofits for, wow, going now, I think we're headed in like year 17, 18, something to that effect. I need to count a bit, but I worked for a nonprofit that provided services to individuals with developmental disabilities. And I've also worked in more sector specific roles, even in for profit areas as a consultant. And my clients were always nonprofit and were NGOs. So nonprofit management has been in my career probably since I started working first thing with my master's way back in Ohio when I had worked with the State Department and the Bureau of Early Intervention Services. So I have primarily worked in grants, contracting, grant management, development, and progressively higher. And I've also done consulting in those areas and just about all aspects of nonprofit management. But grants are probably my first love for sure in this field.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you. Um, so let's talk a little bit about this month's topic of measurement and evaluation. So in the space of grants, what are some things that you've learned throughout the years when it comes to these topics?
Wow. So measurement and evaluation is heavily critical and often uh, one that a subject that people do not necessarily like to uh, involve themselves in, if you will. I think they get intimidated, especially a novice proposal writer or grant manager, when they see that they are required 9 times out of 10, once they've won the grant, that there's a whole new world post grant, winning the grant itself and writing and submitting that proposal. So it's what do you do afterwards? And I think a lot of times we focus so much on the prep stuff, the pre-award things, getting the grant itself, that when we get it, it's wonderful. And then the funder tells you, okay, now it's reporting season. And reporting season is that entire length of that grant, depending on what it is, generally a year, but for some, it could be multiple years with multiple reporting. And the biggest thing is to take it and know that you can only eat that elephant one bite at a time. So don't feel overwhelmed with it. Just get a plan and get organized with it. But knowing that evaluations are happening and the methodologies behind it, even before you submit your proposal, is very important in the entire process.
I love that. I love that you said kind of knowing that beforehand, because sometimes you're right. You get the funding, and it's like, oh my gosh, now it's all these reporting components and areas that got to get measured. Our funders are going to come out and evaluate us. What does this look like? But knowing that before you walk into that, I love that you said that is really, really important for the organization. So what would you say? So especially at, let's say, a smaller organization, you're starting to get grants, you have all these different requirements starting to happen where it almost feels like you're spending more time reporting and measuring the success of your organization and less time doing the actual program. What recommendations would you have for those organizations?
So if you can, and again, not every organization is going to be able to do this at first. So this is completely understandable if you have to work your way up to it. But if you can, try to get or separate those in your office from those who are the program officers who are tasked with disseminating the project, ensuring the project goes the way that you've written it and it's designed for it to go, that they're taking things like attendance, or that they're taking any pre or post tests, or that they are assessing the individuals who are in and getting use out of the program. Making sure and compartmentalizing those individuals in that team with your grant team is probably the best option if you are able to do that. And so if you have an operation where you have those who are working in the programs, they're concentrating on the programs and they're not necessarily worrying about, well, who do I report to? What time do I report to? How do I report to it in grants? Because their main focus and their main background is ensuring that the programmatic needs are met. Then on the grant side, if you will, they're the ones that are dealing with what we would call that post-award type of information. And so they're looking at things such as the data. They know exactly the metrics that are needed, and that maybe they can talk to the program officers or individuals who are working with the programs on the things that they need. So they may say, please make sure that you're keeping track of literacy rates, or please make sure that you're keeping track of, attendance markers or what have you. They can know these are the data points that we need and that were as described in the proposal. Because another thing I'll just swing back to really quickly is that when you're writing your proposal, you don't want to write it and say that you're going to do something that you can't do or that you have no intention of fulfilling, because then if you were to get that grant, that's the expectation with those funds, that you're going to, see if literacy rates have increased by 25% from quarter to quarter. If you don't know how you can measure that, or if that's something that your program doesn't measure and that can't measure, then you are setting yourself up a bit for failure, because you're talking about things that you can't accomplish, and the funder will ask you for that information when it is time for evaluation. So the idea or the ideal part would be that you already know what your goals have been, what your methods are, and what your evaluation barometers are going to be. Occasionally, you'll have a funder that says, we also want to see X, Y, Z that's different than your proposal. But 9 times out of 10, you'll know what they are. And the grant office, if you will, or the grant person will be able to work with the program direct or the program officer and ensure that they're getting that information, that they're calculating that information, so that when reporting comes, they just need to say, hey, can I get this from you? And they could easily send an email or what have you. Formatting, I wouldn't even worry about asking them to format it. That's something that in the grant office, you can do, because again, the program person is going to be doing so many other things related to program specific entities that you want to take all that stuff off. As long as they have accurate measures of what you need, you can format it as the grant personnel, that office, the development office. can format it in a way that the funder is requesting. You can write and tell the story, write the narratives as you need to. But you really, the best thing that if you can, separate them, make those into two different teams so that one isn't doing everything. And then, of course, getting lost in the sauce, as we say, they're getting lost in having to gain or put out specific gains and write a report on top of it. I do understand that there are going to be organizations that cannot do this, especially we're talking very small organizations and ones that are starting off early. The best thing that I can say for those is, again, on the proposal side of it, don't write yourself into a corner. Write for the grant that you can report. That's like the best thing. Write for the grant that you can report. So look at the end result. Just because you know that you've got a great program and that you can accomplish a lot of things doesn't necessarily mean that now is the time to write for that particular proposal, because you may not have the capacity to account for that reporting. And you don't want to get burnt out, don't want to get exhausted, you don't want to leave yourself open to mistakes that could be made because you are burning the candle at both ends. So I would say break your methodologies and your goals into chunks that are measurable and manageable, especially if you are a smaller operation or doing this for the first or second time.
Love it. I love it. I love that you shared that, because oftentimes organizations, especially starting out, get into a position where you're applying for a lot of grants, and then when you get them, not being able to manage them, and not having the separate teams to be able to support. So the program team is the grants team, and or the grants person. Sometimes it's not even a team. Trying to run a little bit of everything. So I love that you talked about, breaking it down and making sure that you're applying for things that you can manage, and then also separating the program team from the grant team. So that way, their focuses can really zoom in on the parts of the program and grant that they need to. So the question I have for you, so the program team and the grant team, I know I've seen it where sometimes with it being separated, sometimes there's things that's not communicated from pre-award phase. When things are written in, you're like, well, hold on, in the program side, I cannot implement this. So what recommendations would you have, like, let's say pre-award, post-award, for the grant team and program team to stay connected and sync on the goals related to the project or programs?
Absolutely. The best thing is to do just like what you said, talk to each other, communicate. And it seems so simple, but we don't do it. But I still, that's the drum that I hit because it's simple and it's cost effective. It's free to send an email. It's free to get on the calendar and talk. When I was in my career, whenever I have been the newbie as a grant officer, grant manager, director, so on and so forth, I sat down before I ever even wrote anything. I sat down, made appointments with our program team. And again, you might be making a lot of appointments depending on how large the organization is. But I made as many appointments as I could with each and every manager of a program, because number one, I wanted them to know who I was so that they wouldn't be, because at that time, like, I was working in an organization that had a lot of people and a lot of programs. And so sometimes and we weren't all even working in the same building. So you don't want to just send someone an email, especially if you're new and they're going to be like, who is this? I don't know who they are. I don't see them. So it was to get to know me just on a professional level so that they knew who I was. And if they saw those emails, they would be a little bit more likely to read them as well and know where they were coming from and who they were about. Number two, a good way to develop those professional relationships is by meeting, because then you can ask them what it is that they do. What are they exactly? What is their role in the organization? What parts do they manage? And asking them a little bit about how they see their own program. it gives you, the grant writer, a lot more detailed information as well, which is helpful in case you're looking for grants or a grant comes on your desk. You're like, oh, I just talked to, Sally, and she said that they're doing this, and this, or they hope to accomplish this, but they need a little bit more funding to do so. So you also get to know the program itself and the needs of the program straight from the people who are working it and who are delivering those particular services. And the third thing is that, yeah, you can establish those boundaries for funding. You can say, hey, part of my job is to give your program funding. So how we do this is my particular system. If something comes across my desk, I may email you. I may ask you these particular questions. We can work together on if this is appropriate measure, if this is something that is accurate to say, if these statistics are still relevant. Of course, program people, they're super busy, but when you tell them, I'm trying to get you funding, a lot of times they're like, okay, this is a call I will take. This is a meeting I want to have. So when you're involving them in that particular process, many times people are much more likely to want to help and to want to assist in that, because they know that if you have as much information as possible and you're able to write that proposal, they want in on that and they want to be able to help you, because that funding will in turn help them. And then you can establish things as far as communication. Same if you prefer phone calls, if you prefer emails, if you do want to stop by their offices or what have you. Ask them if they don't mind if you if a funder can take a tour, because there are some funders who like tours or who want to see it. You can get all of that particular information just by those couple of meetings those initial meetings. And the other thing that I would say that I used to do is, if there were deadlines for reporting, the deadline I gave to the program was always at least 2 to 3 weeks earlier than when I actually needed it. So back that time out a bit. Don't give them the deadline when it is. If your report needs to be in on, May 15th, don't tell them I need this report by May 15th or May 14th, because there may be an emergency on their part. They may forget all about it because, again, they're concentrating on the program, not on the grant in and of itself. And so give them time to be able to give you the information. And if it's a reoccurring report, you just say, like, every first of the month, I need this report, or every fifth day of the month, I need this report. Then you can give them some time. They can give that to you. If they don't give it to you by the 5th, then you can kind of call without feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't have this report and I don't know I'm going to be able to turn this in with the funder because I'm not running up, I'm running up on my deadline. So yeah, cheat a little bit as far as the timing is concerned when you're asking for that information back. It'll save you, the grant writer, a lot of time and grief and energy in the long run.
And the program side would definitely appreciate that, because sometimes it's so busy and so much going on, when there's that urgent deadline and everything else is kind of as important. It's good to have that time built in where ahead of time that you have some time to complete and get what's needed for the grant writer.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about evaluation. And I'm thinking more over when your funder is coming out to evaluate your program. And I know a lot of organizations, this is very nerve-wracking, no matter how prepared you feel like you are. What kind of tips would you give, I guess, both on the program side and in the grant arena, to make sure that you're always ready for these evaluations? Because sometimes you do not get a warning from a funder. So if we can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. If I were the program person on that side, I would actually follow the lead of your grant or your development office, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be the ones that are going to be in first communication with that funder, even if that funder pays a surprise visit or so. I think that funders don't typically do surprise visits as far as immediate pop-ups. So like today, you won't have someone come on your door, like knock on your door in like 2 hours, let's say, for now. But they may send you a letter or make a phone call that says, today's Monday, we're gonna be at your office on Wednesday. So you don't have that much time to get everything together. So if I were the program officer and program team, always follow the lead of your grant team and your development office to see what the best showing is that you can have related to an evaluation that occurs. Always keep your files organized. That's both sides and both teams. If you have records, keep those records. I love monthly records. Keep them clear, keep them well organized, keep them well labeled. That is going to also be helpful in case you get a surprise evaluation or an audit or something to that effect, and get people who want to come and see the organization. But also, as the grants person on the team, the thing about evaluations are that I wouldn't really stress in trying to make them perfect. Because if you're doing the work that you said that you're going to do, everything's going to turn out just fine. I've been a part of audits, if you will, and I use those terms loosely. They used to just call them like program reviews. And they would be these, and generally they came from city or county. There wasn't too many private ones that would do this, but city or county government loved to do reviews, and they would ask for files. They would say, we need files going back a few years, and they would ask for files related to the financials of the organization in and of itself, not even related to the program. They would look at past grants, past reporting. But as long as you keep those documents handy and you keep them well organized, you should be pretty okay when they need that documentation. Also, making sure as the program side that you're available for any interviews in case someone wants to talk to you. But again, as long as you're doing the work and you're being truthful with the work that you're doing, even if there's a day where, let's say you have clients and they're having a bad day, and if a funder toured, they would see that a client is having a bad day. It happens. We're human, and say that, express that. We're not here to be perfect. And a lot of times, because we're all working for the good of the community and social services, we're in areas, we're relating to people where things are not perfect and they're not going well, and people need help. So the goal is not to provide this veneer of perfection. The goal is to be very realistic about what it is that you're doing and to be well organized so that if anyone were to come, they can see the work that you've done in the past and up until that point. But yeah, the program person, I would say follow the lead of your development officers and your grant officers. And for the grants team and development team, it's always good to then, this is when I say developing that critical relationship with the funder, calling them, letting them know, talking to them, providing them thorough reports, pictures, so that when they do get there, there really aren't that many surprises. It's almost where they're just like, I want to see this in action. We want to see this for ourselves, and we want to check and make sure that everything is going the way that we were told that it was supposed to go.
Love it, love it. All right, awesome. Thank you for that. So anything else you think in the area of measurement and evaluation that programs should, or, organizations, I should say, should consider?
Yeah. Again, I cannot stress enough organizing your files. Please do. There are many a time though when people do go to evaluate where things are all over the place and people have no idea what is happening. Also, for both the program side and the grant side, have a secondary person look at it and know where things are in case a evaluation pops up or a question pops up or a report happens to occur when someone is on vacation, or if someone is out sick for an emergency or what have you. The funder may not have any clue of that happening, but you want to make sure that you have a second or third person that you can rely on for both of those sides, that can speak to the program from a program officer side and can speak to the grant and reporting on the grant side. If you are a smaller operation, I understand, again, this may be a little difficult to do. So in those cases, it may be the CEO is your backup. The CFO may be a backup for financial purposes. There may be someone else who is working in the program office. Maybe it's a volunteer, maybe it's an assistant who can also come in and talk about the program. Or it might be in those cases where people do have to pull double duty and talk about both the proposal as well as the program in and of itself. But have people around you that know about the grant, where it's not just you carrying all of that information. It's just certainly helpful to have additional resources and eyes and ears that can provide that information.
I love that. And then how important, because I remember when I was overseeing a large grant, working as the director, one thing I wanted to do, even though I was on the program side, I made sure I knew that grant from the front to the back and everything related to the grant. And then when I went out to the different sites that ran our programs, like, they knew, like, when I got on campus, I always had that evaluation hat. Like, I'm looking, I'm touring, I'm looking, but I'm also that, like, like getting them ready for
Yes.
when that happened. So how important do you think it is for, even on the program side, to still know the grant, know the requirements, so that it's helpful, on your day to day, and having that second person, like you said, that backup person who kind of knows what's going on as well.
Absolutely. I think it's very critical. You may start off at first with program officers or people in the program that don't want to know, or that are kind of like, oh, I concentrate on my program. The interesting part is, the more grants you win, and even the more that you put out, honestly, not even, you don't even have to win them, but the more production that a program team can see, a lot of times the more intrigued they become with the process and with the proposal itself. And when you're winning these proposals that are directly helping that site or directly helping that particular program, they become invested as well. And they want to know, and they want to be there, and they want to talk to this funder, because also it's a little different than their day. They may have their day where they're mostly dealing with that program. So it's like, I know what this is. We do this day to day. So meeting with a funder is like, it's new, it's interesting. They're ready. They're ready to share. They're ready to show people who they don't see every day. It's almost, like being a proud parent, or showing or being a kid who's showing off their work that they worked so much on at school, and they finally get a chance to show it during show and tell. That's how a lot of program officers feel about that program when it comes to grants. So they are a lot more invested, I think, than even they realize, especially once it's won. And once you just have that first one that you win, after that, yeah, they certainly become, most of them are very much willing and able to meet with people. They want to talk to you about other ideas that they have. They're like, oh, can we write this? Can we do that? So yeah, it's, the more you do it, the more they have that relation.
Love it. Awesome. So before I close out today, is there anything else? I know we kind of, so we talked about measurement, we talked about evaluation, we talked about ideally having two separate teams for the program and the grant side, which I love, because that way everyone can be great at their areas. And then also we talked about these teams being able to communicate with one another, so that everything is in line, and pre-award and post-award. We talked a little bit about evaluation, preparing for that, and just doing what you do, keeping your files organized. Anything else you feel in the area of measurement and evaluation that you would like to share before we close out today?
I feel like those are pretty good tidbits as well. I'm sure I'll probably think about it and get back and think, oh, there's something else I wanted to share, but that's just an excuse for me to come back.
Yes, we have to have that. Love it. Well, thank you so much. Before we close out today, thank you so much for joining us. I just want to do a quick reminder to everyone that we have a giveaway happening this month. So don't forget to, in order to win a 30-minute strategy session with Nonprofit Enthusiast Live sponsor, Catalyst Event Coaching, make sure that you invite 10 friends to the group. We're almost at 1,000. So our goal is to get to 1,000 by next week. So don't forget to invite your friends to the group, and make sure that you tune in to Nonprofit Enthusiast Live next week, Thursday, and we'll have Shamika from Catalyst Event Coaching joining us, and Dr. Angela White-Jones. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We are definitely going to have you on again to continue this conversation. So I'm grateful for you and hope you have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much, Lashina. It's been a pleasure, as usual.
Yes. All right. Bye, everyone.